Well, hello YouTube friends. I'm back with another keeper case to share with you. This one, I guess if I had to pick one that would be my all-time favorite, would be this case here, because when I started flint knapping back in '85, my main goal was to be able to just find a piece of flint, and this is Onondaga Chert right here, and this is what the whole case is made out of. The points in this case are all Onondaga Chert, and a lot of them, most of them represent the types of points that you could find in my area of western New York State. So this Onondaga Chert is some pretty tough stuff, and the goal I had was to be able to find a piece of flint, chert, whatever you want to call it, and to be able to chip it into something that looked like what I was finding. Now at the time when I was finding those arrowheads back then, I had no idea what I was doing, and I did realize that the one material that was used mostly around here, I'd say 99% of the time, was this Onondaga Chert. And as you notice, it's kind of a not a beautiful stone, but a very durable stone. It cannot be heat treated, and it is very tough. I always have a joke. I tell people that the reason the Iroquois were so angry and ferocious was because they had to work this stone for their tools. It makes you mad sometimes. But anyway, let's get on to the case. And here's my case of points I made out of, or using, Onondaga Chert. Now, you'll notice that there's quite a variety of shapes in here, and we'll go over some of these, and I'll explain what they are, and a little bit about the age of them. But notice this bottom row here. Seems to be a theme going on here, isn't there? Well, that's because all these points in the bottom row, and I mean I love these points, are Genesee points. And these are late archaic, very durable, strong knives. I don't ever believe they were thrown or used as a dart point or anything. So these definitely are knives, and one way you can tell is because if you do find a big Genesee point, now the ones I found are not all that big. These are some of my actual Genesee points I've found over the years. You notice they have kind of a nice blade sitting on a boxy type of a base, and that was adequate for them to half that into a handle of some sort. But one thing you can tell about a point is if it shows signs of resharpening. Now these guys did something a little different. Now when they would resharpen a point, they didn't use that one method called opposing beveling, which a lot of the Midwestern points showed, where you see extreme bevels on one side and you flip it over and it's the same bevel on this side, which gives it kind of a twisted look. These guys would center their edge and not bevel it so much, but they would resharpen by going down the edge, flipping it over, going down the same edge, and centering it back to the middle of the blade to give it strength and durability and to get more cutting action out of it. So as you see, I've really focused on these Genesee points. Now there were 2 points that I wanted to learn to make when I started flint knapping, and I have been able to accomplish that over the years. One point that I really loved, and only found a few pieces and a couple of whole ones, was a meadowwood point. Now these are paper thin, and they're well made. The flakes just go right across, and they have very delicate, shallow bases, or notches at the base. Excuse me, I'm ahead of myself. So they didn't really go much into notching. They just notched what they had to do to make it so that they could tie it onto something. So these were made great quantities in just a blade shape, and they would cash these out. Now sometimes they would be buried and red ochre would be spread over them, which we believe was a way of showing that it might have been a burial item with somebody to travel on to the next level of life. Okay, the next point that I wanted to learn to make was this right here. This is a Clovis point. And what makes it a Clovis point is that you notice that on one or both sides, you see a thinning flake that travels from the base up toward the tip. This is a very early style point, and this is paleo style. And we call that flake a flute, or these are fluted points. And this one came out really good, nice and thin, nice and balanced. It's got the deep base on it, and these would be ground heavily in the area that they would be tied, just so they wouldn't be able to pull the bindings tight and cut their bindings, so they would grind the edge and make that a lot smoother and less likely to cut. Here's another Clovis point that I made using Onondaga Chert, and this one doesn't have all that great a flute, but it does terminate all the way up to here. But this side really has got a monster flute on it. So that was something that I really truly wanted to learn to do, and I accomplished those goals with a lot of practice, a lot of perseverance, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So let's start right up here. Here's kind of a dovetail style point. You know, this is classic look for a dovetail with that base that you see. It kind of fans out like the tail of a bird. And next to it is one that I really would hope to find like this. I have found a few of these, but not this big, of course. What you see here is the most extreme version of a lot of points that you would find around here. This is a Susquehanna broad point, and these were all over in our area, Pennsylvania, Ohio. If it has a longer base, I'm not sure if I got one in here. I'll find it if I get to it. That would make it an Ashtabula point. Now, working with Onondaga, you know, it's a tough stone, but if you get good quality, you're able to put some pretty decent notches and really get the flakes to travel on this stuff. And this is a beautiful example of kind of a lost lake style point. We don't see many lost lakes. Next to that is a Lavanna point. The Lavannas were large triangular points. They were earlier than the Madisons. What you see right here is a Madison point, very tiny, and those were true arrow tips. So if you want to use the term arrowhead, it would be correct if you're talking about this right here, because they were small enough to tie on the end of an arrow shaft and shoot at an animal. Well, we have another Snyder's, and right next to that Snyder's, as I've said in my past videos, there's a turtle effigy I chipped out using Onondaga Chert. And he's pretty cool. I like him. He's got a pointed nose, and I think he's going to stay in there for a long time. Next to that is a very unique style called the Perkiomen or Perkiomen. A lot of people pronounce that differently, but these again have to be paper thin. And there was a cache of these found not far from where I live in the Genesee Valley, where all of them were broken. They call it ceremonial breaking, to release the spirit of the stone to accompany the dead. And when that cache was found, there was quite a few blades. They were able to put a lot of them back together and to see what they actually looked like. Here's a Jack's Reef. We do find them here. They're kind of a woodland point, and that one came out really well. Jack's Reef are typically very, very thin, and they have these corner notches and a nice base that flares out. Now, next to this one that I just showed you is a Vosburg style point. I made this one during a nap-in that we had several years ago, and I wanted to enter the contest that we have where we compete to see who makes like the best point out of using New York materials, and I didn't have any. Well, one guy had some, but he wouldn't let me have any of it because he thought, if he gives me a piece, I'll make something nice and enter it and win the competition. So after the competition was over, he come over and he handed me a piece of Onondaga Chert, and I made this point, and I'm confident that this would have been the winner. Really come out nice, real balanced, and pretty cool. Okay, let's take a look at this one. This is kind of an Adena blade. It's got that classic Adena base on it. And again, this is an extreme version of what we would find around here, but it's still, you know, it's got the right features to classify it as an Adena point. Now below that is one of my drills. This little guy came out so well, and it's so tiny. Look at this. And it held together very nicely. So it just goes to show you can really push this stuff to the limit. Here's the turkey tail that I chipped out using Onondaga Chert. Now you'll notice in some of these, you'll see this lighter material here. One thing about Onondaga Chert is that when it's aged, or say a point was made several thousand years ago and it laid in the dirt, the acids in the soil from leaves decaying actually make a kind of a acidic condition, and it causes the limestone that's in this chert to kind of decay and turn a lighter color. So that's done artificially today when you make things by putting them in vinegar for about 20 minutes. And the vinegar will take the limestone and it'll actually bubble on there. I think I did a video on this a few years ago about how to make these look old. Here's another drill here, kind of just like a archaic corner notch point that got carved down into a drill. And next to that is a more typical Susquehanna broad point. I really like these. I like this shape. And this is a legal hunting tip, if it was smaller of course, here in New York State, for you to go out and hunt deer, because it's not barbed. It has sloping shoulders, but because of that it has a wide entry wound because of the flared out shoulders, but not barbed. Okay, let's keep going here. This is a bifurcated point, and I don't find many of these, and they're really old. Those are early archaic, and you see by the base that it gives it. This is like a maybe a Lake Erie or LaCroix. But next to that is a fantastic Snyder's point. This one is one of my favorites. You saw one before in another case I showed you, but this one is just absolutely beautiful, made out of Onondaga Chert. Okay, more of a corner notch point here, and this one here is very aged, and as this one is beveled, it's got the opposing bevels, and it's classic of a dog leg or Thebes style point, and this had a ton of limestone in it, and you can see that how it leached out when I put this in vinegar. So we're just about done here examining all these points, and we'll take a real quick look at some of these really nice Genesee points. Don't mind my dog in the background. I shut him in the other room because he's usually quite annoying when I'm trying to video. So if you hear barking, that's him trying to get out. So yeah, this is my theme here with this case, is to show New York types and a variety of points that can be made using Onondaga Chert. So I want to thank you for watching this long video, and for taking a look at my Onondaga Chert case with me. I really appreciate that you watch my videos. I really appreciate any subs you want to give me, and of course if you like this video, give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment. So that'll be it for this time, and there will be another one coming out next week, and until then we'll see you on the next one.